in the crossfire.
Hi guys, this is Kyle from Wildcat Screen Repair. Today we're going to be replacing the front screen and digitizer assembly on an iPhone 4. This one happens to be a CDMA version, which means it came from Verizon or maybe Sprint. A couple of different companies run the CDMA network type. The reason why that's important is that all the insides are slightly different. And let me show you this real quick. This is from screwmat.com. They're called screw mats, and they've got a diagram of each type of phone specifically. So you've got your Verizon CDMA here, AT&T and GSM. They're a little bit different as far as where the screws go and the connectors on them. But this will give you a real good guide on how to keep every screw accountable. If you'll see on here, every little screw has got its own place to go. I really highly recommend these guys. It's a magnetic mat, so your screws don't go kicking around everywhere. Another option, of course, is just keep your screws in a little tin or something. I chose the magnetic because it just makes it really quick. Plus, with every one labeled, you can keep it all accountable, so you know that when you're done, you haven't forgotten any screws. It's got spots for every component here. It's going to be taken out. Really, really useful. Can't stress it high enough on how much I love it. So, quick difference here. If you're going to be doing a screen replacement, make sure you have the right screen for the right phone. The 4 CDMA versus the 4 GSM, or even the 4S, which can be GSM or CDMA, are all different screens. Now, the procedure is the same for all of them, but when you look at the way that the screens have little hooks on them, and you'll see that very later in the video, they don't quite match up from phone to phone. So Verizon, AT&T, and then your 4S, all a little bit different. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and start with this Verizon CDMA phone, and I'll start by showing you what the tools I've got today. So we've got these screw mats. These are great. Love them. We've also got extra screws here. Sometimes when you're taking the phone apart, you find there might be screws missing, or God forbid you drop one on the floor and a cat bats it around or something, right? So got a couple extra of those there. Hopefully we won't be needing them, but if we do, they're available. So let's see our tools we're going to have. We've got tweezers here. This is for getting some of the smaller parts, getting them situated, especially there's one up around the camera here, and there's a little plastic piece down here on the speakers. It's kind of hard to do with just your fingers. We've got a couple of spudgers here, I think is the technical term for them, and let's see if I can show you this. They've just got a plastic tip there, good for prying out, especially along the battery and such. Yeah, so we'll be using that. Screwdrivers. I've got 4 that I use. Let's see. I've got the 5-pointed. Let's see if I can show you this. This is the 5-pointed. They call it a pentalobe screwdriver, and they're used on the bottom of the phones. And this screwdriver looks like a Phillips head, works a lot like a Phillips head, but it's actually 5 points, if you can see that there. That one's important because if you don't have a 5-pointed screwdriver and you do have 5-pointed screws right down here on the bottom, you're definitely going to need that driver to get it out. So we've got that. Let's see, we've got a Phillips head here. These two, the 5-point pentalobe and the Phillips head, are both magnetic. If you get the tools, you can kind of tell they've got a wider shaft here than they do on the tip. We've also got a non-magnetic one. This one is important because there's a point where there's one screw that sits right here that you've got to get out, and it can be quite difficult when the screwdriver is wider. The non-magnetic here are a little bit narrower. So I can't quite get in focus, but a little bit narrower helps to get into that one. So also going to be using a flathead. There are excuse me, there are 3 screws here that effectively stack a screw on top of a screw. A screw screwing into another screw. So the overlying screws use Phillips. The underlying screws that Actually, this picture is quite accurate. It's a metal ring with four cross here that a screw can fit down into the center of it. These guys are best pulled off with a small flathead. I think these are 0 gauge or 00. I'm not sure, but if you look up iPhone repair tools, they're all like $4 on the internet. They come with all the exact parts you'll need. So that's the one you'll need for those. And last but not least, we've got two more parts here. One is a guitar pick, and this is for when we get to the point or opening this up, we'll use a guitar pick to get this separated from the case, to get this screen separated from the case. It's much easier to do with something real sharp. You can use one of your spudgers or even try screwdrivers, God forbid, but I would suggest guitar pick. They're cheap, they're easy, they're perfect. And the last part here, this is the suction cup. Again, they come with the tool, the regular suction cup. The reason for this is that if you got a broken screen, you stick this right on here, it should stick pretty well. And when eventually it'll come time to pull it apart, and this will separate the screen assembly from the mid frame, make it a little bit easier. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first step we're going to do is we're going to grab these couple of tools we'll need right away, which is definitely going to be the 5-point pentalobe. This is the 5-point pentalobe. Then flip your iPhone to the back here, to the very bottom, and there's going to be two on the sides. If you happen to have a screen mat and you're following around, these are the green screws on the bottom. They correlate right there. So let's go ahead and get that done. These are pretty quick. If you happen to be just replacing the back screen here, this is all you'll have to take off to get access to those. Okay, so get that off. Now the screen slides up with a click. That's it. Pops right off. It's really easy to put this back on. Again, the pentalobe screws go into these connectors here when you put it back on at the end. There's almost no way to do it backwards. So we've got, here's your phone. This is the back side in here. Everything correlates to the picture on a screw match, so I really recommend it. And the first thing we're going to do, got to remember that electricity in this is your enemy. We want to get this battery out first thing. That's the first step in any electronic repair. Make sure no power. So this is the screw we're doing first. Let's see if I can get a better picture of this. It's this guy right here. This is a connector from the battery, and there's the screw that holds it in just on the south side of it there. So once we've got that off, it drops down into the picture of where that one should be. Let me get it zoomed in a little bit. You can see a little better. So drop that screw right down where it should be. On the diagram, it shows right where it should be. So we've got that screw done. Directly after that, we'll get our guitar pick here, and we'll go ahead and pop this connector off. That's it. You don't have to do it from this tab anywhere as long as it pops off. Just be careful as you do it. Now it's got this little pull tab that a lot of electronics with battery cases use nowadays, but I don't really recommend it. These things are glued down, and they're glued down pretty solidly. So we may have to go ahead and use our spudger here to get out. If you've got one of these guys, they break a little too easy, so might recommend the spudger, maybe even the flathead screwdriver or the guitar pick. But what we're going to do is we're going to try to pry around it. And this one's been taken out before, so the glue is nice and easy, but it just sort of pops out there. And that's our battery. So we'll just hang on to that one. And move on to the next steps here. So what we're looking at here is we've got this guy, so you can point to it with the magnetic screwdriver. This panel right here is going to be the next one off, and it's going to go here. So we'll pop that down. After this, we're going to remove this panel here. This one's got 5 screws that we've got to take out. make sure to keep them precisely where they're supposed to go. Not all these screws are the same size. They can be very close. It can be very difficult to figure out which one's supposed to be where once you've mixed them up. If you do happen to get them mixed up, general rule is the screws with the wider heads go on C-shaped openings, while the screws with the narrower heads go on O-shaped openings. Normally I recommend doing this flat on the table, but for the sake of this video, let's see if I can't. If I show you directly down, my hand's all in the way, so we'll do it from the side here. Okay, once you get the screws off of this guy, we're going to pop open this panel. And this panel, what's tricky about it, see if I can point to it here, is right down in here. It's got a hook. It hooks around the bottom of this section here, just a little bit. So we'll just be careful as we take it off. Let's see, slide it out a little bit. There, the hook has come unhooked. This thing comes right off, and you can see that little hook that's on there. Anyway, so we take this little guy, pop it down here, and let's move on to connectors. So the next thing we do is going to pop off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 connectors. Well, actually, we'll have to pull that panel before we hit 8. But connector, they all pop off nice and easily. If you use this guitar pick, it won't scratch anything up. We can pull the camera out immediately, drop that down where it's supposed to be. Maybe over here. How about that? Get it out of the way. All these connectors up. We'll fold this guy to the side. Now this is designed to be folded that way, so don't worry about too much. We'll fold it out of the way because we're going to be, in effect, removing this entire motherboard here, as well as the speakers. So that guy's got to be out of the way. So let's get started on that. Here's one of those screws that I was talking about. It uses the flathead. It's got a cross piece, and I believe there's 3 of those. They've got a metal width here. So let's get those first. The last one's under here. We'll come back to that one in just a moment. So let's go ahead and get this panel off here. This is an EM guard, I'm told, and I'm going to make sure we don't lose this little piece. It's very tiny and it gives a grounding to the motherboard. So that little guy right there, drop that down right there. Once we've got that guy off there, we can actually pop off this tiny connector right here. Boop, comes right off. Okay. Underneath that is another flathead double screw there. So let's try and get that one off. And don't mix this one up with the rest of your double screws. It is a different size. A little bit longer. It's got a longer shank before the neck there. And that can be very important to have that one in the correct spot. So next step we're going to do here, let's go ahead and get this guy here. It's right down by the battery clip where we started earlier. Is a very tiny little piece here. It's an EM shield that covers the antenna connector here. So we'll get that guy off there. I'm going to use my magnetic screw. Grab that. Goes on the mat where it's supposed to go. This little piece down here on the diagram there. And we've got to pull this connector off right here. It's a little wire. Now it pops up. Now it kind of wraps around like snake-like, back and forth wrapped around there. It's not so hard. You can just do it with your fingers or with your guitar pick. Just bend that out, get it out of the way. Let's go ahead and get the speakers out. Now you can do the speakers. Oops, you can do the speakers before or after the rest of the motherboard. It's not too bad, but might as well get them while we're down here. Now here's that tiny little plastic piece I was talking about you might need your tweezers for. This little plastic piece here, little triangle, just a spacer here to hold the speakers where it's supposed to be, and it came right out. So that goes right there. Okay, now the speaker assembly is actually disconnected. You just pop it out here. There you go. And you'll notice on this speaker assembly there are these little tabs, these little hooks. See if you can see those. When you're putting it back in, you just got to make sure those get pressing up against the midboard and not stuck on top of them. They're just spacers there to keep things from rattling around. So let's go ahead and put that one down. Next up, let's go ahead and get this motherboard just completely removed. We're going to start with this screw down here in the corner, just above the piezo vibrator there. Okay. Here we go. Now here's another piece. There's another small piece that you're taking off this last, or not this last, but this screw right here from the motherboard is a little grounding strap that needs to be replaced when you're done. So don't forget to put that one back in before you do the camera. Oh, looks like I missed one more connector. You can see all the connectors there. Here's one right here. Pop it out. Done. You can tell when all of them are out because there'll be nothing connecting the motherboard to the rest of it. So, I believe that's all of them. Go ahead and remove this carefully. That is your everything that makes your iPhone work right there. That is the guts and glory. Okay, so we've got that done. Let's go ahead and pull out our vibrator here. This guy is actually glued down, so it can be kind of difficult. I've taken this one apart before, so it's not, the glue isn't too strong anymore. You just kind of wiggle it out. Glued. Okay, there we go. Drop it down. Perfect. Next up, we're going to go ahead and take out these 4 corner screws. This is the reason why we pulled out the entire motherboard, is that the 4 corner screws are very hard to access, as well as the 6 side screws. And these 6 side screws is what makes each iPhone screen unique to its type, like the CDMA version versus the GSM versus the 4S. It's these 6 right here that are different on each of those 3 different types. So that'll be our next step. Okay, so let's get started on removing these 4 corner ones. We're going to save this top right one here for last. It's a little more difficult. So we'll start, and you just go in straight across. They're not angled or anything, they're just flat, and they come right out. If you're using the screw mat, they just have a little box here, a little bucket to drop your screws in. Okay, now this last one's a little more difficult. I'd recommend switching out from your magnetic screwdriver to your regular and more narrower screwdriver, the Phillips head, just because this guy is kind of a pain. You can kind of see that he's tucked way back in here, and the width of the neck on the magnetic one is just too wide. If you use this narrower one, it'll fit in there and make it a little easier. Now probably when you do this, your screw will fall down inside. Oh, that actually popped right out. If it falls down inside, you can just use your magnetic, fish around in that corner, and come right out. Okay, so last step before we can go ahead and pull this screen off is our 6 side screws. Now we're not going to remove these screws. You can, there's no problem with that. It just makes it a little more difficult. give it about 1.5 turns to just get these loosened up. And that's all you'll really need to do. So we'll just turn them about a full turn there and another half. Okay, we'll do that on each 6. Okay, so now that we have these 6 done here, there's nothing left holding this phone together. All you've got here is the screen attached to the mid-frame. There's a little bit of sticky glue around the outside here, which might make it more difficult to pull off. So I recommend, if you can do it, to stick the suction cup on there. It might help you a little bit. Okay, so that's separated just a small amount. See if I can get that in focus here for you. So it's separated a small amount as a pull with the suction cup. You can slide your guitar pick in there and get the rest of it. There we go. And this is going to come straight off the back. Not angled, just straight off. Okay. And once you're at this point, just be careful. You don't want to destroy these connectors. These are the connectors that stay with the screen. Okay, and there you have it separated. The part you're actually going to be replacing is this guy right here, the whole thing. If you get them in a box, they usually come looking just like this. They might have some film over here. That film might have like a small QR code or something. Just go ahead and peel that off. Make sure you leave the silver shiny backing on there. That's going to be needed. So let's go ahead and put this guy back together. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get these slid together and feed these cables back up through this hole right here. There's 2 of them on the digitizer screen assembly. Just make sure they go up there nice and smoothly. You don't want to get them crimped or caught, so just keep them fed, keep them happy. Don't let this one be the part that ruins the whole repair. It can be a little tricky. There are some small tabs that stick out of these cables. Okay, once they're fed through, what we got to do now is get the, oh, not quite fed. See, it's tricky every time. There we go. Come on. Okay, okay. So now we're going to get these 6 screws. It's kind of hard to see from the vantage the viewer is seeing right now, but you want to make sure that these black claw tips slide into the screws with the washers on the head side of the screw towards the inside of the phone. So we do that usually. My easiest way I've found is to put it vertical like this so that you can work on whichever side is the top. That way the washers will fall down towards the inside of the phone. Slide those little feet in, flip it over, and do the same thing for the top ones until the feet slide in perfect, just where they're supposed to go. So now if you look, all the washers are on the inside of the phone as opposed to the outside. Okay, let's go ahead and get these tightened up. Remember, don't over torque these. You don't want to ruin these screws. Okay, next up is the 4 screws that if you have the screw mat, they're here in this box. They're going to go into corners. That's the ones we pulled out here, so let's get those going. Okay, so the final one here, sorry if you couldn't see that, we've got these 3, and the final one is this top right corner. And I'll tell you what, this is the biggest hassle to this phone. Um, in the CDMA version here, this screw here is nearly impossible to get back in because you've got to come at it in a direction like this. And that's why I don't use the magnetic driver, because it's a little bit too wide. So let me see if I can show you getting this one back in. If you decide to leave this screw out, it's not so bad. You've got 3 other screws here that form a 100% connection here, as well as 6 on the side. So you've got 9 there. 9 out of 10, hey, that's still an A, right? But I like to put them all back in, and I'll see if I can demonstrate that for you here. The best way I found this, if you really want to get this in here, is with your handy dandy tweezers. Just drop it into the hole. And voila. Okay, so usually getting that screw in is about half the time it takes to do this entire project. It's the most painful screw to get back together. So got all those back in. Get tightened up. Okay, all of them are tightened. We've got 6 on the side, 4 in the corners, including our painful screw. And let's go ahead and put the piezo buzzer back in here. That's going to go right here. Again, make sure, let's see if we can get this in focus here for you. When you put this piezo speaker in, you've basically just got to place it where it's supposed to be lined up. Okay, so if we look, this screw right here needs to go directly down through a hole there. And these two you want to line up when you're adjusting this guy, turning it, so that they're effectively along the north-south axis here, up and down. You don't want them cocked. If you turn this thing too far, it'll be cocked like this, and that's no good. You want them basically straight. So that guy goes right in there. Eve's one we can do next. You don't have to do this next. If you forget to do it next, it's okay. But I like to put the speaker in. Those clips I was telling you about, you can see them on the front here. We got to make sure these get pushed all the way down. So if it doesn't quite snap all the way and become level and flush, just take your guitar pick here and push these little clips down. Sorry, getting out of focus. Here, just push these little clips down, and that'll get them all in there where they're supposed to be. So next step after this guy, let's go put the motherboard back in. We're going to take this. I find the best way is sort of move all the connectors out of the way using the sort of hook shape of this motherboard until you get right up to the corner here. There's a tab piece right here that will snap into the frame like that, kind of wedge in, and then it lays down flat, and you can see all the little holes line up. Before we go ahead and bolt anything down, we want to make sure we've got this in here correctly. And what I mean is that none of the cables are kinked or caught underneath. So just take these and just sort of flay them back like this. And we see no cables are connected underneath. That's good. Nothing's caught. This guy right here is still sticking out. That's good. This guy from your speaker down here is available. We're going to use him. And these two up here, they connect the digitizer and screen assemblies. They have not been kinked. They're going to lay down real nice and flat right there eventually. And that's means we're good to go. Good to start installing the screws on this. So let's get our double-headed bolt down here, and that'll be the very first one that we put in. Okay, so we've got our double-sided bolt here in the bottom corner. Using the magnetic Phillips just to sort of place it in and give a little bit of screw. Because it's not a flathead, it won't tighten it down, but it helps because I have a non-magnetic flathead. So from there, we tighten it down. Remember, don't over-tighten it, don't strip it, and destroy these screws. Next, we're going to go around with this screw right here is going to go in. You can see it on the mat right here. We're also going to get this guy here as a double-headed, a single head here, and then here will be a screw that's shown right here that also uses this little guy, a little golden connector, and I'll show you how to put that one in. So let me get ahead going on the bottom south side here now. Okay, so this piece right here, we're going to put this little screw down here up where the camera housing goes. First we need to grab our tweezers and get our tiny little gold connector here. And that's going to sit up in here, and I'll show you the positioning of that once I get it installed here. Uh, so the positioning of this guy involves this little gold connector, and this little gold connector sits right here with the two prongs pointing upwards. It's got kind of a spring to it if you push on it. That's where the camera is going to sit and be meshed up against that. When you put the camera in, don't bend those pins down to the ground. They want to stay vertical like that. And again, they're hooked on by that screw right there. Okay. Alright, next up we'll take the camera and we'll stick it back in here. Alright, just rest it right there for now. That's fine. You know what? Let's get this speaker knocked out here. Again, a lot of this can be done in any order. There are some preferred things like that Pazia speaker at the bottom. This guy over here has to be put in there kind of early in the process. Let's get this speaker down. Here's a point where you're going to need your tweezers again. There's a little black triangle piece right here, and this guy just basically sits, if I can grab it, very tiny, sits right there. It's almost a little slot you can see that holds it. You sit right there, and it still shows the screw that goes over it. We'll take our left speaker screw here, put that through the plastic retainer. Oh, come on, magnet. Okay. There we go. Easy does it. Let's see. We've got to put our. This is the double screw with the flathead cross point here. This is the one with the longer shank. This goes in the top right side. So we'll stick that in first. Now I know there's a piece we pulled out of that, but don't put that in yet. So we're going to put this guy here with the longer shank, and directly after that we can start doing connectors. Alrighty. So first connector we can do is this guy. See if I can get us in focus here. So it's this guy right here. Now all of these connectors are kind of hard to get back down. What you want to do is line it up really carefully and push it until you feel or hear a little pop. When it pops, it should stay in there. You can check it by just sort of picking it out lightly. If it doesn't move, it's in there good. Okay. So let's see, we've got our camera pin connector. Make sure as you're doing this to look at it from the side to make sure these connectors are lined up so you're not mashing the connector down on a row of resistors or something inside. We've got this screen assembly right here. There's a pop for me. It's good. Pop, pop. Okay. Don't forget this guy. This guy gets covered up, and if you don't do it now, do it first, you might forget him. He's the smallest little connector here. And if you don't get that on there, you will not get access to your power button. Pop, pop, pop. And okay. Now remember this connector down here is a little wire. You want to basically thread this through the little snake holder here. It's going to be kind of tricky to get it lined up. What you got to do is you got to line up this little connector to that little hole. It's kind of a pain. There we go. We're going to use this guy. So I can get him down there. He's kind of a large connector. It can be a little bit of a bitch. Okay. Next up here, let's not forget this guy. This guy sticks right down here. Now, it's a very small piece for a very small connector. And what this does is there are little prongs on that. The black side of it, well, I guess it's not, it's gold on all sides. Well, the prongs are not going to touch the metal retainer right there. The prongs themselves, so I can get a closer, tighter view of this. The prongs themselves are going to be south of the connector. So that just pokes right in there. Let's see if I can get it down. There it is. So the prongs are not on the north side of that connector. They're actually on the south side of that connector, and that's how they go in. It'll snap in nice and easily as long as this thing isn't worn out or anything. It'll just pop in there nice and easily. So they're going to put the screw that holds this down. This is going to go into the double screw beneath it. So if you put this connector on before you put the double screw on, it won't fit very nicely. And like this panel is meant to hold this connector from popping off. So that's you'll be able to tell because it'll fit nicely once you put that screw in. There we go, that one. Let's put this this EM shield panel. This shield panel is a very odd shaped piece. What you're going to do is you're going to take these, there's two prongs on the bottom, on the basically the south side of it, and you just want to hook those under into the slots that are built for it on this chip here. So they hook in there, if I can get it. There we go. Hooks in there. And remember that other hook that's over here we talked about when we first pulled it off? So that other hook is going to need to go behind that connector. There's like a flat vertical ribbon behind it until it snaps down and it gets caught under there. And you can tell because it doesn't pop off when you use your tool here. It's effectively stuck in there. So let's get the screws going on that one. There's 5 here. Remember, each of them go in their own specific spot. If you confuse them, it's the larger head screws go on the C-shaped connectors, which are these two, and the smaller go on these two. Sorry, these 3. All right, next we're going to put the panel back over this to cover this connector. It's this little flat guy here. He goes right on here. Okay, so we've got 4 screws left. The bottom 2, the one that does the one that does a battery clip, and a little EM shield piece that goes right here. Now this one you might need to do 2 hands, one on the tweezers and one while you do the screwdriver, but you let it sit right on top of there. Put your screw down through it. And this will cover this wire guide here to keep that from coming off there. At this point, we're going to put our battery back in, and just be careful from here on out because it's going to be a live circuit once you get this plugged in here. But there are a couple little connectors on the bottom here. Just line them up real carefully and look at it from the side if you need to. And it pops back down. There we go. We've got one screw that's going to go right here where the battery, hold the battery connector in. By the way, if you ever needed to pull your battery and change it for some reason, now you can. Remember, it's just the bottom 2 screws here, this battery guy here. Don't worry about your EM shield connector here, just this one, the bottom 2. That's how you can replace your battery. So everything on the inside is done. Let's go ahead and put the back case back on. It doesn't matter how this little tab goes, just leave it out there. Remember, the screw holders go towards the screws on the bottom, and then it slides shut. Okay. Last, we take our pentalobe screwdriver, our 5-pointed screwdriver, right through there. Now it may be, if you have a refurbished phone, it may be that you go to use this and find out they're actually Phillips head screws. That's okay. That's a choice that some repair technicians, in back alleys decide to make, but it happens. These pentalobe screws, I believe, only come from Apple, so they can be kind of expensive to replace. They're like $1 each. Compared to the rest of the screws, all my replacements come in a pack of 40 for like $4. So, and that's that. Let's give it a test. See if everything comes on. There we go. Phone works just fine. If you want to test everything, give somebody a call. See if the cameras work. Try front and back cameras. Give someone a call so you can test out both the antenna, the speakers, and your microphone. You can try plugging in your charging port, making sure everything's okay there. So that's the final repair. You've got an iPhone 4. This was the CDMA version. Good to go. So again, this is Kyle Sanders with Wildcat Screen Repair, and thank you for watching. I hope you safely replace your phone screen. In the crossfire.